Today I want to present you two chapters from my book, Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Video Game Compendium, in video format. A free preview? Yes. A commercial of sorts? Also yes. These two chapters cover WCW Nitro and WCW NWO Thunder. Both are terrible, awful games, which unfortunately tanked the goodwill World Championship Wrestling had established with their first PlayStation release, WCW vs. the World. Not only are these games bad, but they dropped during the peak of WCW's popularity, leading to millions of horribly disappointed fans around the world. Ask me how I know. If you enjoyed these two chapters and want to buy a copy of the book, you can. The link is in the description. If you don't feel like buying it, that's also fine. Thanks for checking out these chapters for free. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me thank the patrons, and we'll get down to business. Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts, and more. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. World Championship Wrestling's first 3D video game released in North America in 1997. WCW vs. the World combined 14 of WCW's best and brightest wrestlers with nearly 50 others from around the world under royalty-free codenames, in an all-star brawl for it all. Exclusive to Sony's PlayStation, WCW vs. the World was a fantastic jumping-off point. However, maybe next time the licenses to the international stars could also be secured. We wouldn't have to call Ken Shamrock Sherlock. Sabu wouldn't have to be labeled David Harley. So on and so forth. Tag team matches, ring entrances, the wish list of features for a sequel stretched longer than Chris Jericho's scroll of 1,004 holds. And then there was WCW Nitro. A follow-up to WCW vs. the World, this was not. The Man Breeze, who would later rebrand as Aki Corporation, were not heading up development. In their place was Inland Productions, an Illinois-based studio famous for their work on the legendary 1998 PC title, Bassmasters Classic. It should be noted that by famous, I mean not famous at all, and by legendary, I mean largely forgotten. WCW Nitro ditches the gameplay stylings of WCW vs. the World entirely. Quick grapples tied to a tap of the circle button, with stronger grapples coming from a measured press of the same button, are gone. Each wrestler having their own unique moveset has also been discarded in favor of one unified universal loadout that applies to every member of the roster. From the standing position, vertical suplexes, pile drivers, body slams, and more can be executed with the same combination of buttons across every wrestler, regardless of size or stature. The 7'4", 500-pound Goliath known as the Giant will perform the exact same high-flying maneuvers as the 5'7", 200-pound Eddie Guerrero. Unlike WCW vs. the World, where recreating the structure of an actual professional wrestling match by building momentum and hitting bigger and bigger moves would increase your spirit meter and lead to a finishing maneuver, WCW Nitro opts for another system, complete and total anarchy. There are no reversals in WCW Nitro. Pressing a combination to perform a suplex or slam will result in that move being executed 100% of the time, with no risk of recourse or failure. Regardless of whether you're competing against the AI or a friend, grapple moves can be abused in foolproof fashion. Just knock your opponent down and press the buttons for your next move while they're in the middle of standing up. They're locked into the get-up animation, meaning they can't escape or counter in any way. This process can be repeated as many times as you like, in as many matches as you desire. How this made it past QA is anybody's guess. By the time 1998 arrived, World Championship Wrestling was no stranger to gimmick matches. From steel cages of all shapes and sizes, war games, Chamber of Horrors, etc., to ladder matches and more, WCW knew how to get wild. With the selection of maneuvers being as shallow as it is, it should come as no surprise that Nitro shipped with 0 specialty match types. One-on-one competition and tag team contests make up the entirety of the lineup. The starting roster of 16 playable wrestlers includes the video game debuts of Booker T, The Giant, Alex Wright, Don, Mike, and Steve. Those last three names aren't nearly as recognizable as the previous trio because they aren't professional wrestlers. They're members of the WCW Nitro development team at Inland Productions. The undefeated and unbelievably popular Bill Goldberg didn't quite make the cut, but Inland's Tony the Rod and Brian did, without issue. Priorities in any professional endeavor are as necessary as they are valuable. That is, if they're in the right place. Where WCW Nitro did succeed was in creating a lasting impression. No, this isn't the setup to a joke. The following sentence is not a punchline. Asking any wrestling fan and gamer what they remember about the Inland Productions games, we'll cover Nitro's sequel Thunder later, will likely result in the same answer. The promos, or rants as the game calls them. Upon first glance, Nitro's character selection screen doesn't appear to be anything special. The wrestlers are arranged in an 8x8 grid with a profile shot displayed above whichever character you've highlighted. Nothing out of the ordinary. This is a common design in fighting games. It isn't until you press circle that the magic happens. All 16 wrestlers who make up the starting roster come preloaded with a promo or rant. Kevin Nash, clearly not remotely interested in taking the situation seriously, begs the player to choose him for their match. Sting, who is interestingly caught between his surfer and crow looks, as Nitro was developed and shelved for several months before finally releasing, warns of a fatal encounter. Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Scott Hall, nearly all of WCW's top stars are here, stating their case as to why they're the man for the job. It's hard to convey how impressive these full-motion video promos were in January of 1998, but the fact remains. These were the shining star of WCW Nitro. The lone shining star, that is, twinkling in an otherwise barren and broken galaxy. Though Nitro initially launched as a PlayStation exclusive, the game would eventually find its way to both the PC and Nintendo 64 in late 1998 and early 1999, respectively. Unsurprisingly, the N64 version shipped devoid of the game's most memorable feature, the full-motion video rants. The year-long delay did, however, allow for an expanded and updated roster. WCW Nitro is not remembered fondly, and for good reason. Poor visuals can be forgiven in the presence of high-quality gameplay. Unfortunately, Nitro's gameplay was arguably the biggest disappointment of the entire package. Inland Productions, the fledgling studio that they were, took on the tall task of picking up the torch left behind by Aki. But not every challenger is capable of defeating the champion. World Championship Wrestling, in January of 1998, was still absolutely in its prime. It's a shame that their lone PlayStation game, released in their biggest and best year, a game carrying the name of their flagship television program at that, was such an awful disappointment. Every new year brings with it the opportunity for a fresh start. We carry forward the triumphs of the previous 12 months while leaving behind the tribulations that held us down. For World Championship Wrestling, the curtain closing on 1998 proved far more consequential than anyone could have imagined. On December 27th, 1998, WCW's star player, the one and only Bill Goldberg, lost his World Heavyweight Championship to Kevin Nash at the company's biggest pay-per-view of the year. Along with his title, Goldberg's titanic 173-0 undefeated streak came to an end. Days later, on January 4th, 1999, Nash willingly surrendered his newly won World Championship to Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Labeled the finger poke of doom, this turn of events triggered a never-ending decline in WCW's television ratings, ticket sales, and overall quality. The debate over who should have ended Goldberg's streak is a matter of opinion. Some say it should have been Diamond Dallas Page during their match at Halloween Havoc. Others believe Bret Hart should have outsmarted the Man in a battle of brains versus brawn. But weighing the options of a storyline decision made over 25 years ago in a book about wrestling video games is a fool's errand. I've only raised the issue of the finger poke of doom because it ties perfectly into the company's PlayStation video game at the time, WCW NWO Thunder. A direct sequel to WCW Nitro, Thunder doubles the starting roster from 16 to 32. Stars missing from Nitro like Raven, Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, Buff Bagwell, and more are now fully playable, complete with their own signature and finishing moves. Has the gameplay changed in any notable way? Yes and no. Every wrestler still shares the same basic maneuvers tied to the same basic button combinations. Yes, the Giant and Kidman still perform the same flying head scissor takeovers and powerbombs. And using the L2 button to taunt still refills the life bar at the top of the screen in case you find yourself in trouble. So what's different? Thunder introduces the test of strength mechanic. Every time two big behemoths go toe-to-toe, they'll meet in the middle of the ring, lock up, and try to out-muscle each other. Hogan versus Warrior, Goldberg versus Lesnar, it's a time-honored tradition carried on through the ages. In Thunder, simply tapping up and the circle button together launches the test of strength. Once connected, the player mashes as many buttons as possible, completely draining the opponent's health bar in a matter of seconds. Yes, that's all it takes. The test of strength, which lasts literally 7 seconds, can reduce a wrestler's energy from 100% to 20%, meaning just one more punch, kick, or slam will make them vulnerable to a finishing move. How this mechanic passed through quality assurance is anyone's guess. But again, we have to remember which promotion we're dealing with. This was WCW in 1998. A 7-second match with almost no offense doesn't seem so far-fetched when you recall that the only man capable of defeating Goldberg was beaten by Hulk Hogan with a single finger. In that sense, it could be argued that WCW NWO Thunder may be the most realistic wrestling video game of all time. All jokes aside, developer Inland Productions did seem to focus on realism during the game's development. The over-the-top and exciting entrances seen on WCW television, missing from the prior title, are represented here in Thunder. They're not animated ring walks crafted specifically for the game, but 5-second full-motion video clips that play before matches. Still, it was something. A step in the right direction. Not every wrestler enters to their actual theme song, but many do, which was a great surprise. When a heel pulls off a victory, fans throw garbage into the ring, another staple of WCW at the time. Not only was this feature true to the product, but that's also something that hasn't been recreated in any game to this day, over 25 years later. New match types were included as well, in the form of Battle Royale and Steel Cage. Throwing opponents over the top rope like Donkey Kong chucking barrels is a deliciously silly moment to witness, much like launching an aerial strike off the cage walls. Yes, dives are executed from the cage walls, not from the top. Neither escaping the cage nor jumping from the top is possible, as your character simply stops climbing halfway up. Why they stop their ascent, much like the overpowered nature of the test of strength, is anyone's guess. WCW wrestlers have been leaping off cage tops for years at this point, so the absence of that opportunity here is truly baffling, as is the disappearance of the audience during said steel cage matches. Where'd they go? Maybe they bought tickets to Monday Night Raw. Again, true to life. Inland's priorities, though, remained misplaced and miscalculated. A new gameplay mode allowed players to pursue the television, United States, or World Heavyweight Championships, but the signifier for competing any path was always the same. An image of the United States Championship belt in bronze, silver, or gold. Why go through the trouble of including 3 different titles only to visually represent one? Although the number of playable wrestlers had more than doubled, Inland once again included themselves as playable characters. Not only that, but several members of the THQ lineup were included as well. Each wrestler began the game aligned with a set faction. Imagine Hollywood Hogan with the NWO, or Raven with the Flock. And these alliances could be changed at the press of a button. Swapping a character's team also changed their outfit. Sting with the Wolfpack, red and black. Swap him to the original NWO, red becomes white. Several oddball attires can be found by assigning Bret Hart to the Four Horsemen or Randy Savage to the Flock. Luckily, the rants at the selection screen have made their return. No, Kevin Nash has not developed any sort of concern for the situation at hand. It would seem that World Championship Wrestling at large did not share Inland Productions' lack of urgency, as Thunder would be the final time the two would team up. Inland went on to develop 3 more games before closing in 2002. WCW moved on to a partnership with Electronic Arts, releasing Mayhem and Backstage Assault before going out of business in 2001. Thank you for watching or listening, whatever you did here today. If you enjoyed these 2 chapters and you want to read the rest of the book for yourself, you can. You can buy a digital copy down in the description. If you want me to read a couple more chapters, maybe you need one more commercial, let me know down in the comments. Maybe I'll do one more. Thanks for hanging. I'll catch you next time.